Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs? My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. Poppin' Rick.
What's good? What's good? What's good?
I don't know what it is. I'm not sick anymore. I feel fine, but I still sound like this.
Maybe it's
I
permanent.
don't understand. Oh, that would suck. Forever having my nose run. That must be what it's like.
It's permanent until like summer. And everybody's fine again.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you, I'm kind of permanent. Stuffy nose or runny nose. Allergies, bro.
Yeah, dude, seriously. Maybe that's part of what it is. I don't know. But anyway.
Maybe.
I just got over a sickness and I went it was like 50 degrees out and it was raining and I went for a run in the rain. So that's probably not the best.
Great idea.
Yeah, wonderful. But anyway, welcome on in. We got week 6 starts and sits on this show. Help you through your lineup decisions as we go into week 6. Hopefully you enjoyed that Thursday night football game. I don't know what happened pre-recorded, by the way. So, I'm
gonna say the Chiefs won. Taking a shot in the dark.
Ooh, yeah, that's
that one.
Hot take. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I know.
But anyway, yeah. So we are going to give you your starts and sits for the week. Before we do that, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and your other podcasting platforms, please leave a review and share this pod with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like, and comment down below any questions you may have for us. All righty. Let's start with the quarterbacks.
We can do that.
Yeah, quarterback starts. So my start at the quarterback position this week is Dak Prescott at Los Angeles. Now,
Some people might be rolling over here and that, or turning our show off.
Dak is sucky. I'm not gonna lie, he's been bad, and everyone was getting all lubed up about his 1 interception on the season after 4 games, and then he had his 3-pick game against San Fran.
I love the videos of him being like, "Yeah, I promise you, I'm not throwing as many interceptions as last year."
Yeah,
and then it cuts to him throwing 3 interceptions against San Francisco.
He has 4, and it's week 5. But yeah, so he's had 6, 21, 16, 15, and 8. Honestly, I remember a couple years ago, I drafted Dak and he kind of broke out a little bit, or he had a really, really good season.
His best year of his career. Yeah,
the best year of his career, and he was kind of always mid before that. He was always around where Kirk Cousins always ends up, quarterback 12, 13, 14.
Yeah,
and wasn't great. And that season, I just took a risk on him, and he had a great year. And last year, he was kind of okay. This year, he has gone right back into that. And I don't know what it is with this guy, but the defense has been winning this team football games. It certainly has not been Dak Prescott. So anyway, but for fantasy football purposes, against good matchups, Dak is startable, obviously, and you probably have him rostered. So against the Los Angeles Chargers, I think this is a good matchup. I want to believe that Justin Herbert's going to be able to throw the ball, and there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. And when you look at the amount of fantasy points given up to the quarterback position, the Chargers are the 4th easiest matchup for quarterbacks, 21.7 fantasy points a game. So this should be around an 18 to 20 point performance for Dak. If you have Dak on your team and you benched him because he sucks, but I would put him back in your lineup because he does have a good matchup this week. I don't know what the long-term situations are for him. His schedule does get slightly easier over the next 6 weeks, so maybe, the tides change for him in fantasy football. But for this week, I'd start him.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think I would do the same too. It's a good matchup, but it definitely makes me nervous. I'm not just starting him to start him. You have to be in a pretty bad spot.
Yeah.
With bye weeks and everything, though, and injuries, you could be. For me, it's Kirk Cousins. which kind of I don't want to do this because he's on my fantasy team, and half the time when I say this and he's on my fantasy team, it ends up not doing that well. But I do like Kirk. He's playing the Bears, which is one of the best matchups that you can have. And I think a lot of people are out on Cousins as well because of the Jefferson injury.
Yeah.
And although I don't disagree with that, I think he's probably going to take a hit. I don't know if it's going to start this week against the Bears. The Bears defense is not good. I know they played decently well this last week against the Commanders, but their defense was better in the run game this week than it was the pass game. The pass game still gave up a couple big plays, a couple touchdowns. So, like, even though their defense improved, their pass defense still wasn't great. So, even without Jefferson, I feel like TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, and KJ Osborne is good enough to have a lead to a good enough game for Kirk Cousins, right? I mean, obviously, he needs Jefferson to do well against some of those teams coming up on his schedule, but for the Bears, I don't think he does. And because it's a really good matchup, but people are still down on him, I think he's a good start.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually looking at Kirk Cousins before the show, and I was like, oh, yeah, it's a good match.
It's the Bears, bro. Their defense still blows.
That. Now, I will say, I am very nervous about Kirk Cousins' ability to.
I mean, for the next 4 weeks, absolutely. I don't know if it's like, I think this week he'll still be fine.
Everyone wants to know what he looks. Actually, in New England, we have a quarterback that his ceiling was this guy, Kirk Cousins, and obviously has not worked out. But everyone's like, "Oh, we should trade for Kirk Cousins." Whoa!
So stupid.
And I'm like, well, you know what? You're gonna see what it looks like without receivers with this guy.
Well, I think it'll still be okay.
Specifically, the best receiver in the game.
I mean, he's in his earlier days at Minnesota. They had Diggs. I forgot about Diggs.
Yep, they had Diggs.
His days at Washington?
Yeah, he had some good games in Washington.
They never really had. Did they ever have an elite receiver when he was at Washington? I don't think they did. And he wasn't great, but he was okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, fair enough. But I don't mind it. It's against Chicago. It's a soft landing spot.
Right.
All right. Let's move to the quarterback sits. My quarterback sit of the week is Jared Goff at Tampa Bay. Goff has actually been good for fantasy football this year so far. He's put together some interesting games. He had 15, 26, 20, 13, and 30 the last 5 weeks, which makes him QB10 on the season.
Oh. He was QB10 last year, too.
Oh, wow.
He's QB10 right now.
So the next 2 weeks, though, he does have some difficult matchups against Tampa Bay and Baltimore. So I think Goff, for me, is a sit this week against Tampa. Tampa currently gives up about 14 points a game to the quarterback position. They've been pretty good. Now, who knows? Maybe do they play Tampa this week? Yeah, I got that right. I feel like they played Tampa last week and pantsed them, but I don't know why. They pantsed somebody.
Carolina, NFC South.
Oh, yeah. So Tampa Bay they've been good on the season.
They have.
So, and they do have a good defense. So we'll see. If it, like, pretty much the early part of the season, Jared Goff has been playing above his skis. I would say the whole Detroit Lions have been playing above the expected fantasy point totals and above expected win totals for the early part of the season. They've been playing really great. But I don't know if Jared Goff can continue it against tougher defenses like Tampa Bay. So I would sit him this week if you have the opportunity. He's probably a streaming option for you anyway. And I'd let it go with there. Who's your sit this week, Rick?
Well, it's funny because you just made a trade in our home league and you just got CJ Stroud. My sit of the week is CJ Stroud against the New Orleans Saints.
Kill me.
It's not a good matchup. The Saints have been very good defensively this year. I know the Patriots have been absolutely brutal, but he did score 0 points against that Saints defense. They've been statistically one of the best defenses in the league to start the season.
Yeah.
Stroud hasn't really faced that level of a defense yet. Like the Ravens in week 1 is good, but they were injured. The Colts don't have a great defense. The Jaguars is kind of okay defensively. They have some pieces, but They're really good at stopping the run, not necessarily the pass. The Steelers was the best defense he played, and he did pretty good against them. So that was kind of encouraging. And then last week against Atlanta, he did okay. He only had like 14 fantasy points. So against the Saints, I don't love it at all. I do like CJ Stroud, and I think he's had a great start to his NFL career. But I do feel like he's kind of due for a game where he throws like an interception or two. Just because, I mean, how long of the streak is he going to have 0 interceptions to start his career? He's already broken the record, so for rookies, to start an NFL career, I think he's due. I think he probably gets it this week. I still like Stroud, but just I wouldn't start him this week.
Okay, fair enough. I might start him.
I mean, in your situation, I would probably, because you just traded for CJ Stroud. You had Anthony Richardson. And what's your quarterback from? Geno and Stroud?
Geno and Stroud right now.
I might lean Geno, but I don't know. Just for this week, your next 4 weeks after this, Stroud.
Yeah, until I love just hanging out with the rookie freaking quarterbacks here.
Although he's got a bye week, so you're gonna
Richardson
get out until week 8. Week 8 is the week for CJ Stroud against the Panthers. But I could be wrong. Maybe you could play him this week and he gets 30 points. I'll take that as long as they all go to Nico.
I had Nico. I could have had the stack.
Yeah, you could have.
But anyway, all right. Let's talk about the running backs. Running back start of the week for me is Raheem Mostert versus Carolina. Now, I don't know if Jeff Wilson Jr. is coming back this week. He was activated off the 4-week IR.
Probably is.
And it's a 21-day window for him to return. I don't know if they're going to activate him for Sunday, so keep an eye on that. But that didn't stop Raheem Mostert from having massive amounts of success early in the season, and I would imagine that the first game back for Wilson is not going to be them just force-feeding him the ball. I actually thought Mostert wasn't going to be available in this game, and it says he's fully healthy and ready to go. So, with Rick's guy, Devin A-Chain, sadly out for this game, I would start Raheem Mostert. He's going to get a bulk of the carries against Carolina, which is an easy matchup. It's kind of like a plus matchup in every direction. So I would take Raheem Mostert. I'd start him this week and roll with it. But who's your start this week, Rick?
My start's a little gross. I think Mostert's an easy one for me, especially with HA now. And that Panthers rush defense is Swiss cheese. But for me, it's Brian Robinson, and he's not somebody that neither of us have been super high on in the past. He has had a good start to the season. Last week, he was not good at all against the Bears. But it feels like one of those classic scenarios where it's a run-heavy team that was forced to throw the ball, 50 times last week? How many times? I think they had like 55 pass attempts versus the Bears.
Yeah.
Something ridiculous like that. I know the old school coach, Ron Rivera. This is like where you've just watched football enough where you know what they're going to try to do versus the Falcons. And that's going to try to establish the run, get the run game involved again. It feels like it's a game where the Commanders are going to try to go back to what they quote-unquote do well, which is debatable, which is run the football, establish the run. And it's against Atlanta, who has had an improved defense this year. I think Jesse Bates was a nice add. And their defense is solid, but if they do have a weakness, it is their rush defense. It's considered a good matchup on Fantasy Pros. They've given up a decent amount of points to running backs this year. So with that said, I think Robinson gets a lot of touches against an defense.
Yeah.
And because of that, we'll put up some fantasy numbers.
Yeah, fair enough. Brian Robinson's been real good this year outside of that game last week.
Yeah, but he's had his moments, and he's the goal line back, so...
All right, so my sit at running back this week is all Arizona running backs versus the Los Angeles Rams. And the Rams so far this year, just to give you some information, have given up 14.7 points per game, so they're a top, I think, 12 easy matchup for the running back position. The big thing for me with this is that everyone's running onto the waiver wire to get that DeMarcado kid, or whatever. I don't even know how to say his name. You know what I'm talking
whatever
about?
You just said,
and
yes.
Keontae Ingram. And so the number one waiver wire ad, we didn't even add him to the show because I was like, ain't no, like on Tuesday for waiver wire ads, I was like, there ain't no way this kid is going to turn into something with James Conner out. Like, no thanks. And then we found out that he's not starting, so everyone switched to Keontae Ingram, I think is his name. And I'm like, I don't even know who these guys are.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they can't have success. But it's not an easy matchup for them this week.
No.
Against the Rams. It's a tough matchup on the road, on an offense that really isn't great to begin with, who's been overperforming. So to me, I look at this situation for the Arizona running back room. If you have these guys, there's no reason they should be in your lineup. I'll stand on that table, and if they end up going off, I still applaud you for not playing them because it's a smart move. Like, don't just blindly shoot them. Like, there's no upside here.
Yeah.
They might randomly have a good game because that's fantasy football and randomness happens, but like, chances of that happening are very slim, and you need to be smart, and not starting these guys is smart.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think it is interesting at like the running back position as a whole in redraft. Like the zero RB people, I feel like every year have a better case with the way the NFL has been evolving because with the injuries to running back plus the kind of elimination of workhorses, we're in week 6 now, and you can be starting Ingram and Jeff Wilson and Deonta Foreman and all these random guys. It's like, ugh, so gross.
Yeah.
Plus the other thing with these two guys that is, if they're both out there, are they gonna split, or is one of them gonna get more work than the other? You don't really know.
Right. If they split right down the middle, then you're screwed.
Right, which is, I think, probably what's gonna happen. My guy is Jerome Ford. It's funny, we talked about him. The moment they signed Kareem Hunt, we were both like, I mean, we weren't even super high on him anyway because he's just not gonna replace Nick Chubb straight up. And then they brought in Hunt, and it was like, I still would add him, but I don't love him.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up having a really good week in week 3, but it was because he had 2 touchdowns. He had 1.8 yards per carry, so gross. And then the week before the bye against Baltimore, he had 9 points. Yeah. I think Ford will be an okay start some weeks. If he has a really good matchup, I'm okay with it because he looks like he's going to get 12 to 15 touches. So if you have a good matchup, 12 to 15 touches could be okay with a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not going to be the case this week. He's playing the San Francisco 49ers. They right now are the best team in football. They have a top 5 defense, a top 5 offense.
Mm-hmm.
They have a good pass defense. They have a very good rush defense. So it's not a good situation. It's probably going to be a negative game script for him as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw what they did to Tony Pollard, and we saw what they did to the Cowboys, and we've been watching what they've been doing to every single team.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been good for opposing offenses. So
no, that's a smart.
I'm out on Ford.
Smart sit this week.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move to the wide receiver starts. Mine is Zay Flowers at Tennessee. Flowers had some interesting situations last week with some drops. He's learning something from Nelson Aguilar, I guess.
Yeah.
But Tennessee's given up 32.5 fantasy points to the wide receiver position, and I don't think Odell Beckham is going to be in this game, and I think Bateman is also out. Is that correct?
Bateman, I don't know.
Hold on, let me check Bateman. But do you know about Odell?
I don't know about Odell either. I know he got hurt again, which is like, of course.
Bateman is probably going to play. Odell, I know, played this week and then got hurt. For the
he fully practiced on Thursday, so he's probably going to play, but I wouldn't trust it.
So, anyway, I was hoping that no one would be in the receiving room for that team, but it's, it doesn't matter. Zay Flowers is Zay Flowers. He's been getting a majority of the target share.
Even when they're all out there, Zay has been the number 1 target.
Yeah. So, I would start Zay Flowers this week against Tennessee because it is an easier matchup, and the majority of dudes on that team probably will not perform at a high enough level that they'll get fantasy points, even in good matchups. Like, it's been like 4 points for freaking Like I wouldn't surprise me if seven of those 37 points per game get split, or 32 points per game get split between Odell and Bateman, and then the rest go to freaking what's his name?
Yeah.
So Zay Flowers. So I don't think he's gonna have a 20-point week this week, but he'll have a good game, and you should start him in your flex at least.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, look at the target share. He hasn't had a touchdown yet this year, but he's still putting up double-digit fantasy points. That's always a good sign. And he's got a good matchup. For me, it's Chris Godwin. Godwin has not done anything crazy this year, but he has been pretty solid, 10, 10, 8, and 19. Last week he had 11 targets, which was really good to see, but he's up against Detroit. It's a very good matchup for him. There's also a chance that Mike Evans doesn't play this week. He's been battling a hamstring injury. He didn't practice all week. We are recording this before Friday, though, Friday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
So don't know if he ended up practicing on Friday, so you'll have to wait and see on that. Even if he does play, it's a good matchup for Godwin, and he had 19 last week. He's been solid all season. If Mike Evans doesn't play, though, Godwin could have a really, really big week, and he could be looking around like the 20-point mark.
Okay, sounds good. What are we doing? Sits now for the wide receivers?
Yeah.
All right, so my sit this week is Terry McLaurin at Atlanta. I didn't think I would be saying Atlanta has like a defense that stops people this year, but
AJ Terrell.
we are saying this. He's a good player. I have him on
Jesse Bates, bro. I told you that was at the time. I told you that was one of the best signings.
Mutt teams.
One of the three best safeties in the league.
But anyway, he's got he had 5, 16, 10, 22, and now he's had 8. And that's with an easy schedule. So he's wide receiver 28 with an easy start to the schedule here. Lots of plus matchups for him. Against Atlanta, I think it's less about, like, of course it's going to be, of course it's going to be a lot of, like Rick said, the AJ Terrells and stuff like that, and they're going to be able to lock him up. But I think more of what this is the way that Atlanta plays. Because they run the ball a lot. I mean, there's a week where they gave 20 carries to Behan and 17 to Tyler Allgeier. So, I mean, they run the ball quite a bit. So, They run the ball, control the pace of the game. The Commanders, it's not going to be a high-scoring affair between Atlanta and the Commanders. So, to me, this is one of those games where I don't think Terry McLaurin is going to have the best performance. He'll still get some opportunities. He might even score 10 points, but I think the chances for him to have a calamity game are much higher than his chances of actually producing well this week. So I'd sit Terry McLaurin this week for somebody better.
Yeah, that's fair. We have 2 pretty good receivers on this list. Mine is Tyler Lockett versus Cincinnati. And I told Morgan this before the show. Every time I put Lockett or a Seahawks receiver on this list, I feel like they always go off.
Yeah.
When I tell them, when I say that they should be a sit, and when I say they should be a start, they almost always do bad. So not a great track record with Seahawks receivers, and they always make me nervous. But I'm gonna say sit Lockett. He has one of the tougher matchups this week against the Bengals. He has done okay this year, but he hasn't been great. And I do think JSN is kind of due to have not necessarily even a breakout game, because it feels like he's going to be their wide receiver 3 this year. But it feels like maybe a game where they kind of get him going more. Last week he had 6 targets, so him and Lockett had the same target share. I think that hurts Tyler Lockett. Mm-hmm. And if they do that again this week in a tougher matchup, I don't see a big week from him. He has had 8 and 9 the last 2 weeks. I think that probably continues this week.
Yeah, agreed. I feel like my pauses are really long, but I have a crisis.
What's your crisis?
Me and my wife do HelloFresh, right? Little mid-show story.
Okay.
And she's getting ready to cook the dinner, and she found out they give you these little cards, so we just pick a card, and we're like, oh, that's what we're eating tonight. So she went in the fridge to go get one of the bags they put all the food in, and there's not a bag for the recipe that we picked. So then I said, so what are you doing? She's like, eating my steak and cheese from last night. And I was like, oh. So what does that mean?
Oh, you gotta figure that out.
Yes. So I've been trying to text figuring that out. Anyway, sorry for the long pauses, everyone. I do agree with Rick though. I was looking at the Cincinnati matchup for Lockett and DK Metcalf too because Cincinnati's been pretty good stopping the at least wide receivers from having large amounts of success on the year. So it's kind of just pick your poison at this point. But I would start DK almost every week just for explosion upside. And Lockett is the other dude, who I think is not as matchup proof.
Yeah, 100%.
So I agree. All right, let's talk about tight end starts and sits for the week. My start is Zach Ertz at the Rams. Now I absolutely hate to look or do players in the same game. But I did an exception to the rule because my sit was against the Los Angeles Rams, and this is a start against the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams have given out 12.8 points per game to the tight end position. And Arizona has been having small amounts of success passing the ball as the season has gone along. I don't think they're going to have as much success this week because of that. But when the other receivers on the team get locked down, Josh Dobbs typically goes to the safest option on the field, which is the middle into the tight end. And to me, I feel like that's what's going to happen in this game. The Rams shutting down receivers on the outside is typically what is causing the tight ends to get more work because it's realistically the only guy open on the field, that in the slot position. So, the Rams' middle of the field is a little bit weaker. And when you throw, when they get the ball to Ertz, I think they're going to make him a primary target in this game. So, I expect somewhere between 9 to 12 fantasy points. I don't think he can put up big weeks anymore. I don't think Zach Ertz is that type of player. But he's been getting 8, 9, 10, 11 points every single week, and I think he's tight end 15 on the season so far. So very interesting. But either way, Rick, who's your starter tight end?
No, I like the Ertz one. He was probably my first choice.
I dropped this guy. I dropped Hunter Henry to get Ertz, and I'm interested to see what you have to say.
No, I think I have Ertz higher ranked than Hunter Henry.
Okay.
So
all right.
My start is Hunter Henry, as you might be able to tell. And kind of a gross one, he had 0 points this week. The Patriots' offense has been brutal. It has been so bad the last couple weeks. Really all season, but the last couple weeks has been like worse than the NFL. Yeah. And I think against the Raiders, I could be crazy, and we really will find out because if they put up 0 against the Raiders, then this might be the worst team. It probably is the worst team in football.
Yeah.
But I don't think they put up 0 against the Raiders. I don't think they do a lot. But if they even put up a couple points, Hunter and Henry, those first 2 weeks when they were scoring 17 points and moving the ball, had 16 and 17 fantasy points. And even against Dallas, where they had 3 points and they lost, 38-3 or whatever it was, he still had 9 fantasy points. So I think against the Raiders, if the Patriots get an offensive touchdown, 60% chance it's probably going to Hunter Henry.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So the odds are in his favor. It's a good matchup. He's coming off a bad week, so everything is aligned for him to do well. The only concern is just how straight up awful the Patriots are.
Yeah. I will say, getting blown out 2 straight weeks and only scoring 3 points in 2 games is very bad.
You don't say.
That's very bad. But I do, even the worst teams in the league bounce back from that at some point.
Right.
So
even who the worst team in the league last year was probably the Bears?
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, the Bears actually had a good offense, so maybe that's not a good example.
They had an okay offense.
The worst offensive team in the league last year. I could be wrong, but I feel like they still probably put up like 14 points a game.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're at some point you're going to score some points. My thing is, it's the NFL. So, and the way the defenses are hamstrung, like they will score points eventually.
Yeah, even if they still suck, like they could get a trash time touchdown here or there. Like it's still possible to score.
But I'm feeling, after getting blown out twice, I'm feeling a little bit more positively here on a Thursday afternoon.
That's not how how he should be.
No.
But okay.
They're going back to basics over there, which, whatever. All right, let's talk about the sits at tight end. I got Kyle Pitts versus Washington. Washington gives up 5.9 fantasy points a game to the tight end position. Kyle Pitts just had a bit weak. Everyone's probably like, he's here to stay. Let's go. Roll. No. You sit Kyle Pitts until he puts together 2 straight games. If he puts together 2 straight games this week, then maybe you can start him next week. Ask me then. But I'm not starting Kyle Pitts this week. Even though I did start him last week in a league, but it's because I trade. It's a team I'm tanking on, so this is the first thing. And I traded for him. You know what I mean? Because maybe you get the tight end 1 in fantasy.
Still think he's going to be a
Dynasty,
top
Dynasty
3
leagues.
tight end if he ever gets quarterback.
Dynasty leagues. Yeah. Oh, but yes,
I'll stay with that take.
Anyway, so sit Kyle Pitts against Washington. Rick, who's your sit this week?
Mine is probably shouldn't have done this because I have the same player in my sits, so I broke our rule. But I have Dalton Schultz against the Saints. He's also coming off a really good week, but is also playing a really tough matchup. Kind of goes with the theme. I don't love that matchup. I think that's going to be a low-scoring game. And Schultz has been so up and down this year, and he's coming off a good game. I wouldn't expect it to happen again. One quick note on Hunter Henry and the Patriots offense, not to get stuck on that, but the worst team in the NFL last year offensively was the Denver Broncos. They still averaged 17 points a game. That was bottom of the NFL.
Yeah.
16.9 to be exact. So the Patriots offense, as bad as it is like they're still not going to score 3 points every week. They should, at least against a team like the Raiders, should put up like 10 to 17. That's the last thing I'll say.
Okay. All right, there you go. There you have it. Starts and sits for week 6. Love it. We got buys and sells coming up on the next show, and then we'll send you on your way to enjoy football this weekend. It's getting interesting. It's almost mid-October. What is happening to the NFL season? Talk to you later, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.